You need to understand that in a democracy there's a price you have to pay for freedom. And that's a lesson that we have to continue to relearn every generation. Because every generation has to make new sacrifices in order to preserve that freedom. We have to make it clear to future generations that all of us, really all of us, are the beneficiaries of the sacrifices that were made by those that went ashore on D-Day in Europe, in the Pacific, and North Africa. Those who made it and survived, well, they'll be the first to tell you that the real heroes are the ones that didn't make it. They made the ultimate sacrifice. You have to defend your freedom. Freedom doesn't come for free. And young children have to learn that story.
Captain Don, can you tell me a story about the old days?
What kind of a story you want about the old days, Nick?
I want to know about the boats that won the war, the one you drove.
Oh, the boats that helped win the war? The one I drove was an LCVP, a Higgins boat. Is that what you want to know about? What do you want to know about a Higgins boat?
Well, I want to know why you built it.
That's easy to answer. Years ago, we needed one. We had to have it.
We needed to be able to land tons of equipment and thousands of troops on enemy beaches, in Normandy, France on D-Day, and in the Pacific. They were built at a company called Higgins Industries by an Irishman who had started building boats when he wasn't much bigger than you are, Nick. He came from Nebraska, traveled to the deep woods of the South, so that he could open a lumber business. He started in Alabama and eventually began a boat building company in New Orleans. Ever since he was a youngster in the militia, he had been intrigued with the problem of making the transition of troops from water to land easier. We call that an amphibious landing. Well, the swamps in southern Louisiana gave him plenty to chew on. The water was shallow, filled with tree roots, sandbars, alligators. Cajun trappers and oil prospectors worked in these swamps, and they needed boats that would navigate through the bayous without getting stuck. They needed a boat tough enough to come right up on the bank and then go back into the water again without getting its hull or propeller damaged. No one had built a powerboat that could do this. Some said it was impossible, couldn't be done. But the impossible never stopped this man. His name was Andrew Jackson Higgins. He and a determined bunch of Louisiana folks helped build the boats that won the war. I know it's probably hard to picture how boats could win a war.
But I'll tell you, I've got a good way to give you an answer to that. Let's go over to where they're building a brand new one off the original plans, and I can talk to all those guys that are working over there. Between a bunch of us, we can explain it to you real easy, a lot easier than I can. Want to take a walk over there? All right, ready to go? All right.
Now, Nick, one way to learn about the past is to talk to historians. My friend Jerry Strahan has written a book about Andrew Jackson Higgins, his boats, and the boat builders that helped win the war.
In the 1920s, Higgins was involved in the timber industry. But he couldn't afford the more expensive tracts in the low-lying areas. So what he had to do was go up around Natchez near St. Catherine Creek, where it was swamp area, and he could afford these cheaper tracts. The reason they were cheaper is that people found it difficult to get the timber out of the swamps. If you used a conventional boat that had the power to pull the timber out of the swamps, it wasn't shallow draft enough to get in to get the timber. If you used the conventional shallow draft boat that could get in to get the timber out, it didn't have the power. So Higgins developed his own boat, which is a very shallow draft, very powerful boat that he called the Eureka. So in this early stages, he was doing what he would later need to do as a designer of amphibious landing craft. His boats were going up shallow bayous, they were jumping sandbars, they were pulling up on bayous and retracting back into the water. They were doing the same type of maneuvers that would need to be done for D-Day.
Right here, this seawall on Lake Pontchartrain, that was one of Andrew Higgins' favorite testing grounds for his boats. Get the boat out here running wide open, come plowing up this thing. Why the heck would he do that to one of his brand new boats? Well, he wanted to make sure that that thing was going to stand, because you never knew where you're going to land Pacific, you had some coral reefs that had knobs, razor sharp edges that cut the bottom out, and if you didn't have a good solid built boat, that thing wouldn't last. You'd dump a bunch of guys out there in the middle of the water, boats sinking. One of the worst places was Normandy, because they had barricades, stuff buried in the sand, they had concrete pillars poured, didn't show out of the water just below the level of water, so your boat would hit that thing, and if you didn't have a strong boat. So this was a perfect testing spot for Higgins's boats. All right, want to walk on a little farther? Okay, Nick, we'll go in here and see these guys. We'll introduce you to all these guys that helped build the boat. During World War II, I was a coxswain on one of these LCVPs, just like the one we built here during the war in the Pacific in the Philippine Islands.
How you doing, Don?
Okay, Roy.
How you doing, young man? First time you sail a boat?
Yes.
How do you like it? What do you think of it?
Well, I want to know why you built it.
Oh, well, one of the reasons I was interested in it is because I rode one of these into Iwo Jima in 1945 with the Marine Corps. I enlisted when I was 17.
And most of us were not much older than you are. So you say you want to know what it was like. It was kind of really a spooky thing.
Everywhere you look, you'd see ships, boats of various types.
They climb down the nets, get in the boat, you move out away from the boat.
You're really not cognizant, at least I wasn't, of everything around you.
But as soon as that guy gives the signal and you punch down on that throttle and the boat squats down, everybody starts thinking about what's going on.
I did. I thought the boat was going to go down.
So you got 36 guys. You may have 10 or 15 of them that could be taking a walk out in the yard. They doesn't affect them. They don't seem to be worried, no worry. You may have 6, 8 of them that are crying. You may have a bunch of them just hunched over the bottom of the boat, just trying to avoid thinking about what's happening.
You really don't have much to think about, because when the ramp goes down, you're just trying to hit the beach to get out of the boat.
Nobody in front of you but the guys firing those guns.
But you couldn't see the enemy. He was too well hidden. And you just had to work your way inland a little at a time. And you have to be alert and try to watch for landmines. The man right next to you may step on one and he's gone. He's blown to bits. And you don't know why you don't get it, but it happens that way. And at the end of the first day, we had 50% casualties. That's out of a battalion of 900 men. And when we left 26 days later, of that 900, there was only 150 of us walked off.
Okay, Nick, we're going over here. I want you to introduce you to two of the guys that had a lot to do with building this boat. Jimmy Duckworth, Lieutenant Coast Guard, and this is Graham Haddock. He worked for Mr. Higgins building the first boats.
In the early days, we didn't have a lot of government interference with what we did, so we could get ideas, dream up something, and then try it. And if it worked, that was good. If it didn't, we went on to something else. And so that way, we developed things as they went along, and so that gave us an incentive to try new things.
The sound of the Higgins boat in World War II was the same as the sound of the helicopters to the Vietnam veterans. Every waking moment was Higgins boat engines delivering the mail, delivering the wounded, bringing men to the beach, delivering cargo to the beach. It was the pickup truck of the invasion force. It did everything, and they were everywhere. In early 1997, the National D-Day Museum asked me to attend a meeting and help them assess a collection of weapons that they had received from a closed museum in France. At our first meeting, they saw that I was Coast Guard, and they asked me if I would help them find a World War II Higgins boat, and I agreed. Well, in looking for a World War II Higgins boat, all you find is a pile of rotted timbers and wasted metal. so I wasn't successful. But what I found was even more important. What I found was Andrew Jackson Higgins' biographer, some original factory workers, and the original plans for the boat. It became very obvious to me that if we were going to get a World War II Higgins boat, we would have to build it. Each of us here who worked on the project had a different reason for getting involved in it, but I think primarily we all wanted to just stand up and say something great happened here in the state of Louisiana during World War II. Plus, it was a great way for all of us to say thanks to a tremendous generation of Americans.
When you have such a group of dedicated volunteers like this, you build a degree of camaraderie that just makes it so enjoyable being together that every weekend you look forward to the next weekend.
The boat represented a whole lot more than just your average construction project. You never saw a more diverse gathering of people than what we had building this boat. We had mechanics, contractors, carpenters, doctors, lawyers. We even had an IRS guy.
Everybody had an appreciation for the Higgins story and the Higgins boats, but we knew what they had done and what they had accomplished. But for the actual layout, design, and workings of the boat, no one knew exactly, there being none surviving. So when we finally got the plans, go out over them and started building them, we realized what an incredible piece of engineering this boat is.
The test was, is it historically authentic? Was it in the boat? If it was in the boat, it had to be in this boat. Yeah, this project has been part plans reading, part interviewing veterans, and a large part an archaeology expedition because of the numbers of old parts and pieces that we had to scavenge from wrecks from World War II to determine exactly how the construction was accomplished.
Very early in the project, we located a wrecked and sunk Higgins landing craft in Irish Bayou. It's not too far from here.
So we sent a dive team out, and what we picked up from the bottom of Irish Bayou was just scraps and pieces of junk. I wanted to torch it, just throw it away. I didn't see any use of it at all, but one of the guys in charge of that little expedition was adamant that he wanted to try to reassemble those pieces and parts of that old boat right here on the floor. And he did, and it became very valuable to us when we realized that some of the plans had holes, missing plans, didn't exactly know how to do it. We referred to the Irish Bayou wreck and came up with the exact methods of construction.
Craftsmanship wasn't too bad. As long as we kept an eye on everything and made sure everything was done to snuff, that worked out very well. Getting materials, on the other hand, proved to be a bit of a problem. Ramp was a problem. Fortunately, we found a ramp from a boat that had disintegrated in San Francisco, and we had it shipped out. But in small variations in the bow of the boat over the course of the war, design variations, meant that our ramp didn't exactly fit our boat, and it had warped and twisted somewhat in the last 50 years. And it was quite a fight to get it to meet. Of course, it's got to be a watertight seal.
This boat is mahogany framed. All this gray that you see, this is dining room table mahogany grade furniture wood. That's what Higgins made his boats out of. Grade A only. You'll never see pine in a boat like this, not in the frames. He wanted it to last a long time. The sides are going to be made of mahogany plywood. The bottom is planked. The mahogany plywood will be spliced together on end, glued, so that you get a long continuous sheet of mahogany. The characteristics and the grain structure of the plywood were such that no one in the world manufactured it. I located a manufacturer of similar plywood in Greece, and we asked him if he could alter his manufacturing techniques to make plywood exactly the way Mr. Higgins had made it during the war. And they said, there's no way that we can do that. It would mess up our factory production for an entire day to do that for 25 sheets of plywood. I found out that this factory owner was a Greek underground fighter during World War II, and I told him that this plywood that we needed so badly was going to go into one of these boats that had helped to liberate his country. And he said, I'll make you plywood. And he did.
This boat has a double hull with a viscous membrane trapped in between the two, so the boat could be on board a ship for months and months and then dropped in the water and was instantly watertight. It was a phenomenal design.
No leaks. And we found the company that was still in business that made that viscous membrane.
Dolphinite.
Dolphinite.
The boys have a very strong feeling for dolphinite. It's extremely messy to work with and it gets everywhere. And we had the last production run of it. We managed to get all the dolphinite we needed. There's no more in the world.
We actually found the nameplate for this boat on eBay. It was a brass nameplate about so big that indicated that the boat was made by Higgins Industries, and all the vital statistics, load weight, davit weight, hoisting weight, horsepower of the engine and such. We looked all over to try to find one, and we found it on eBay. I bid on it and was high bidder, and when the owner of the plaque of the nameplate found out that it was for this boat, he came here and donated it to us. Lloyd Lovett, who came from Memphis, Tennessee, he was the World War II Navy inspector who inspected these boats for Mr. Higgins before accepting him into Navy service during the war. He came here from Memphis to see this boat and approve it.
We showed him around the boat, and of course he was highly excited by it, and I asked him, did he think that we were doing a good job, and he remarked that he would let me know after the inspection. And after his personal inspection, he said we were definitely on the right track. We were doing things that he would have approved of.
Well, I think you did a damn good job. I think you did a good job. Very good.
This is no cigar box with a little motor in it. This is a full boat. But any GI that landed on a beach in the Pacific or Europe could walk on this boat today, and he wouldn't know the difference between it and the one he landed in, because it is identical.
Everyone knew this was the last one. We had to get it right. First time we launched the boat the pier was covered with people. There were people all over. 2 or 3 of our carpenters were down inside the hull with all the deck plates up because everybody wanted to know what was the word. You could have heard a pin drop, and all of a sudden one of the guys stuck his head up and said, "It's leaking," but it's only leaking from about 3 places. And that was music to my ears. That was wonderful. This boat only had about 3 or 4 minor discrepancies. From a bunch of guys who had never built a boat before, it was perfect. When we started building this boat, I promised everyone if they helped build it, they could drive it, and we would put the boat on a beach, and we would put them on the beach. The landing was pretty interesting because these boats to me had only existed in one dimension in photographs before. And here I had an opportunity to ride in one of these boats with guys who had really been there and done that and ridden in these boats. These guys were my heroes for my entire life. So we picked out a beach that we were going to hit, and we came into the beach sort of on a slow bell, about half throttle. And when the boat went aground, there was the most god-awful noise you ever want to hear in your life. So we stopped. The cargo bay was loaded with our vets and the people who'd built the boat. And I looked at them like I was tearing up our boat, and they looked at me like, what are we going to do now?
Hey, Joey, I don't want to get my feet wet.
Well, she's freed up. Come ahead, Hart.
This is what we built it for. It was full throttle ahead. We hit the beach, everyone cheered, the ramp went down, everybody charged off onto the beach. It was one heck of a glorious day. It would be difficult for me to pick a proudest moment on this project over the 2.5 years that we conducted it, but I'd have to say it was probably the christening day.
So I'd like to start by welcoming you to the PA 3321 christening and commissioning ceremony.
I think the thing that kept all of us going was that the boat came to represent something way bigger than any of us as individuals.
The christening and commissioning of a naval vessel into service is a time-honored product of the rich heritage of naval tradition. Ladies and gentlemen, our invocation will be delivered by Archbishop Philip Hannon, who served with the 82nd Airborne Division in World War II. Following the invocation, the Archbishop will bless PA 3321 with water obtained from the surf near Normandy.
God our Father, who teaches us to guide our course in the light of your wisdom, make this beachhead memorial a reminder never to forget the lessons of World War II. This faithful memorial to the landings in Normandy and the Higgins landing craft represent the enormous cost in blood, tears, and treasure of World War II. May this memorial be not so much a history of the past as a pledge of the future. May God give us ever the light to know the right. May God give us the might to defend the right, that justice and freedom may ever prevail according to the words of Scripture. Live as free men, not using your freedom as a cloak for malice, but as servants of God. Amen. And now it's my privilege to bless this craft, and I bless it in the name of Almighty God, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and I now have the honor to use the water that was taken from the channel right near the beachhead.
What a great, great day that was. We had thousands in attendance. We were particularly proud to have Gail Higgins Jones, Andrew Jackson Higgins' granddaughter, who christened the boat
I christen thee
with a bottle of Old Granddad whiskey.
in honor of all the men who saw combat in one of your 20,000 predecessors.
And what was really great was when the Old Granddad hit the bow of this boat, the entire crowd got this tremendous aroma of bourbon as it swept across the crowd. It was incredible. It was like the revisitation of Mr. Higgins himself, who had just come to approve what we had done.
The significance of this event today is this, to me, what can be done with the spirit of volunteerism. Not only do we honor the memories of those who gave their lives in World War II and who drove these Higgins boats to the beach so that our soldiers and Marines could get ashore and secure our freedom.
It takes certain people at different times during the course of history to come up to the plate.
They came from all walks of life, all parts of the country, to work together to build these boats during World War II.
For whatever reasons, my grandfather was picked for one of those people just to come up to the plate, and he did. And there are a lot of other ones who came up to the plate.
Just a handful of them even knew how to build a boat to begin with, but they all had the spirit of cooperation and willingness to get the job done, and they did.
I believe that they built this boat within the same spirit that all of the people that worked in war plants in World War II had.
Truthfully, for so long, there was no street, no school, no plaque, no anything. And then for all of this to happen now, it's truly almost a miracle. It's absolutely wonderful.
I think Higgins has been a forgotten hero since the war. Now with the opening of the D-Day Museum, and especially since this LCVP is going into the museum, Higgins and the employees of Higgins, who for so many years richly deserved this recognition, finally are about to get it.
We intend to display it with its bow door open, an interactive display, if you will. I want people to walk aboard it and to try to imagine what it must have been like to be 18 or 19 years old on D-Day in 1944.
It just goes to show that if people have an incentive to do something, they can create miracles.
See, Nicholas, this boat's built to last. They were built well then, too, the highest quality. But during the war, they were disposable, like us. Remember that whenever you look at this boat. Remember what we went through. Think of what it was like to ride in those boats and have nowhere to go but forward. This boat will be around when all of us World War II veterans are gone. When we are not around to tell you our stories, you can look at this boat and see what we did, what it took. So, if the time ever comes, Nick, that you have to do the same thing, you'll know that you're not alone. People before you have done it too.
Nicholas, you get your questions answered?
Yes, sir. Now I know why you built that boat. You built it for me.
For you and your children.
Three years ago, everybody, it was June 1997. Most of you were here then. I'm sure you remember it was hot just like it was right now. 3 long years ago, we started building the PA 3321. We started with a swept clean slab. Most of you stood right outside in the sun, and we talked about doing this. Most of you are here today to see the fruits of our labor. It's the last day that we'll really ever all be here.
with the boat where we built it. I can't thank you all enough for the teamwork that you offered. And I'll tell you something else that I've learned from you senior citizens, and that is, although your body may age, your spirit never does. I've learned a lot from all of you guys with regard to that. I saw a lot of you all get younger as this project took shape, don't you think? My hat's off to all of you all. I want to propose a toast. Toast to all great Americans who rode these boats onto the beaches, and to all great Americans who toiled over them, planned them, sweated over them, and built them. Cheers! Cheers!
To receive your copy of Builders, Heroes, and the Boats That Won the War, send a $30 donation to Louisiana Public Broadcasting, 7733 Perkins Road, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70810, or call 1-800-973-7246 and share the memories of the heroes who built the Higgins boats with generations to come.